Hello, my name is Jianhua Hu, and I would like to present my Project 2 of Decision Making. My Project 2 title is The Origins of Utility Theory. As a basic concept of the utility theory, utility is a cornerstone of the whole theory, and also is a very basic and fundamental concept of the game theories and also economics. However, the measurability of utility remains challenging. Just as John von Neumann said, the question of the measurability of utility is similar in character to the corresponding questions in the physical science. However, we have to say it's much more difficult than the physical science. If we want to understand the utility concept better, it's good to come back to the history. During the history, there were three major shifts occurred. The first one is from qualitative analysis to quantitative analysis. The second one is from cardinal utility to ordinal utility. The third one is from individual quantity to total quantity. And the whole history of utility theory can be divided into 5 phases. The first phase happened before 1870s. The second happens after 1870s to 1900. The third one happens after 1900 to 1950. It's slightly overlapped with the fourth phase, which happens just after the Second World War till the 1955. The last phase happened after the 1950s till now. First phase is known as the period of label theory. At that moment, people believe the pursuit of happiness is human nature, and everyone is rational. And people also try to explain the exchange value of community by label theory of value. They try to compare two community if the two community contain different proportion of label, and the exchange ratio could be different. However, later on they found the quantity labor as well as the profit rate and how this community are demanded on the market. All of these factors will influence the exchange ratio. So this theory could not be used to describe the value or utility precisely. The second phase is known as marginal utility theory. It was founded by William Jevons in 1871. Marginal utility is the extra benefit derived from the consuming one more unit of a specific good or service. And consumers often experience the high marginal utility when margin cost is lower. By this theory, people could compare the same attribute against a different volume or different quantity. It's a big step forward. However, the measurability of utility was not solved yet. At the third phase, which is known as ordinal utility theory, many of the problems associated with the immeasurability of utility were solved by the so-called ordinal revolution, which was initiated around the 1900 by Pareto, and the most famous tool is called indifference curve. People compare two communities and try to find the equivalent point. However, Hinks and Allen proposed in the famous paper Rethinking the Theory of Value that utility as a psychological phenomenon cannot be measured, nor can it be summed up. It can only show the degree and order of satisfaction. Later on, around the Second World War, John von Neumann and Morgenstern founded expected utility theory. And they tried to set up axiomatic assumptions. And also, they tried to, one part of the assumption is treating utilities as numerically measurable quantity. The main problem with the expected value theory or expected utility theory is that there might not be a unique correct way to quantify utility or to identify the best trade-offs. So after the 1950s until now, utility theory goes for experimental and behavior economics, and many different experiments were undertaken in order to understand the physical essential of utility. However, till now, measuring utility remains the biggest challenger of the utility theory. In other words, we cannot say utility as a concept is now fully understood and measurable. So it gives us, just like the history, it gives people a very confusion impression, because utility theory is probably the most useful and powerful tool for decision making. However, the basic concept is not fully described yet. So how can we make good decision? So I try to understand the other side of the same coins. So if we cannot fully understood and fully clearly define the concept of utility, probably we need to think about another way. That means how we can avoid, if we cannot improve the quality, how can we avoid the traps, the big mistakes of decision making? So I explored some books and found some economics and also some people summarize 8 typical traps for decision making. First one is failure to frame. That means fail to frame the problem. The second one is status quo. That means people tend to answer questions to change with no change because people just like a status quo. The third one is the bias of anchoring. The fourth one is confirming. Fifth is group thinking. Sixth is expert advice. Seventh is complexity, and eighth is numbers. All these things are traps. Sometimes people call these decision-making bias. Based on my personal experience, I believe in order to make a good decision, at least we need to think about 3 aspects. The first one is how can you define the decision-making process. The second one is whether you can avoid the major traps or biases of decision-making. Based on these 2 foundations, then you could think about to use advanced decision-making theories, such as utility theory, to help you make good decisions. As a summary, I would like to point it is the first important decision everyone needs to make regarding how to make the decision. Probably this is the most and the first decision before you really do some decision making. And also, please be aware to make a good and thoughtful decision becomes critical in business environment. It is also the same for personal life, if not more important. I believe every engineering staff, every manager, and every responsible citizen should learn and practice decision-making theories. Thank you.